Imagine the world suddenly buried in an ice age. Outdoor temperatures have dropped to a steady minus 60 degrees. In such harsh conditions, heat and food became the
Son
most valuable
ormanında
resources in South Korea's frozen concrete jungle. The survivors tried to stick together at first, but quickly realized the resources wouldn't be enough for everyone. And then, a full-blown war broke out in the apartment corridors. But in the middle of all this chaos, there's one man, Hanfeng. He lives fearlessly in his warm castle with girls and plenty of food. So someone went back in time, back before the apocalypse, to fully prepare. On top of that, he gained superpowers, letting him clone food and increase its size. Not only that, he then built a solid base with heated greenhouses and even a sauna. So how did it all begin? Let's find out. The broadcast suddenly cuts out and falls silent. Then, someone's booming voice is heard calling out to Hanfeng. Our guy is shivering from the cold as he goes to open the door. Looking through the peephole, he sees his secret crush, Hyuna, is the one who came. The girl couldn't stand the
konuşacak
cold.
hali bile
She can't even speak anymore. Our guy opens the door without a second thought to see if she's okay and invites her right in. Unexpectedly, Hyuna jumps in and starts kissing him. Hanfeng is stunned and doesn't know what hit him. The girl definitely knows how to kiss because when it's over, our boy gets tongue-tied and can't even describe what suddenly happened to the girl. Remember, this girl was his unrequited love. So the guy probably feels like a total alpha male inside. Right then, Hyuna confesses her feelings and says she's always loved him. Right in the middle of a terrible apocalypse, she realized someone like him actually cared about others. To make her role even more convincing, Hyuna takes his hand and places it on her body so he can feel her heart pounding, and says she's ready to do anything with him. And yes, that's exactly the famous honey trap our guy fell for. While he's lost in a fantasy world, Hyuna starts rubbing her leg between his.
başlıyor. Adam iyice
The guy's getting too emotional and letting his guard down, and he's opening up about his feelings. He says his daughter means the world to him, but how they're acting right now makes no sense. Since Hyuna is a master manipulator, she tells our boy to close his eyes so he can enjoy the moment. Overjoyed, he closes his eyes, eagerly waiting to see what happens next. He'll probably die of excitement, but later. The girl he likes follows up her first kiss by slamming a blow onto her jerk boyfriend's head. That heavy blow to his head leaves him in a pool of blood. Hyuna pretends to be scared while the poor man trembles in pain. Supposedly, she didn't expect them to actually kill someone in cold blood. But that jerk she's dating is reminding her that she shouldn't play the innocent bitch, and that they both knew from the start this guy had to go. It's not like they were going to leave Hanfeng alive. After all, we live in a world where everyone looks out for themselves.
kıyamet ortaya
In an apocalyptic setting, instead of pitying her, they voice their happiness. Because they found Hanfeng's resources and loot. And that naive man trying to do good is now drowning in his own blood. He's totally fucked and can't even move. As the coldness of death swallows him, the last thing he sees is Hyuna flirting with her man. The end came because of a ruthless woman's plan. And with his last breath, he takes an oath. If he gets a second chance, he'll stop being a toy for others to use and discard. As conscience fades and darkness takes over, that terrible feeling gives way to a glowing warm light. They're pulling it toward them. At first, he thinks he's gone to heaven, but then, as his spiritual body experiences a world full of pain, those innocent expectations are shattered and torn into 100 pieces. At the end of that traumatic sequence, he jumps out of bed drenched in sweat and questions his surroundings. Hanfeng was vanishing
önce
seconds
yok
ago,
olup
but now he's just fine. Not just that, the world is good too. No sign of the apocalypse. Even after 30 minutes, the sun is still warm. It's a kind of warmth he thought he'd never see. Looking at the calendar, Hanfeng learns that today is June 28th. When he realizes she's back, he knows he has to act fast. In the original timeline, Doomsday was supposed to begin on July 15th. This means that after he died, this guy jumped back in time and landed just a few weeks before the apocalypse. Expressions of shock, amazement, and confusion are racing across his face. He clearly didn't expect to be reborn. But this time, it's back with some minor changes. Let's touch on the glowing red hand business for a sec. Ever since Hanfeng regained consciousness, this guy's hand hasn't stopped glowing bright red. He tries to brush it off like this, but no luck. To describe the sensation,
Gerekirse
the glow feels warm and doesn't hurt at all. At first, he thought his mind was playing tricks on him. But then Hanfeng sneezed out of nowhere, and things got even more interesting. That hand, which was red a second ago, now glows bright green, adding to the total confusion. But this time it's different because Hanfeng can't control the intensity of this glowing power. In his haste and panic, he causes the light to grow even larger. He stands there, staring blankly at this newfound problem. The sudden radioactive glow begins to shrink in his hand. The behavior of this glow effect is odd and different from the red one. They slump down, showing a sudden drop in energy. Yes, ever since that green light activated, his body has become more exhausted than ever. Waving his hand in anger, Hanfeng suddenly realizes what's going on. This event happens just like in the Manhwa stories he loves to read. The protagonist is reborn in the same way,
yeniden doğuyor.
but this time they're equipped with overpowered abilities. So our boy pulls out a cursed knife to test his strength and hopes for a miracle. But at the end of the day, when the knife doesn't react, things don't go as planned. He's just standing there like a clown. Plus, his stomach is growling because that energy crash really hit him hard. Checking the fridge turns out to be a total waste of time. Because there's jack shit in there. The situation is getting more troublesome than you think. She should at least eat something, or she'll risk fainting again. Seeing a jar of roasted soybeans, an idea comes to mind. The only snacks that might work in an apocalypse aren't a proper meal, but they'll fill your stomach for now. He reaches for one of the beans and pops it into his mouth. But the moment he does this, the soybean explodes into a full-grown bean plant. That glowing green hand fades, and his fatigue vanishes. Hanfeng can't quite tell if it's the soybeans or something he made himself. He grabs one of the bean sprouts, opens it, and is amazed to discover it's his new power. Hanfeng is quite impressed and wants to look into this deeply. But in his current state, he has a few matters to handle first. First step is stocking up on supplies, so he won't be short during the apocalypse. Next stop, the supermarket. In the next scene, he's lost in thought, navigating through the chattering crowd. Hanfeng is confused, gathering his thoughts. So far, you have two types of shimmer, and the green one is known to be more unstable, plus it causes extra fatigue. Then, there's the final part, and maybe it's the most interesting. The moment she touched the soybeans with her glowing hand, they turned into actual bean sprouts. He still hasn't fully figured out his power, and it's frustrating him. While he is lost in thought, a familiar voice brightens his day. Leona, that woman who betrayed him in his past life, has come to see him. She's a total knockout, sure, but the thing is, hanging out with her will literally put you in the grave. Hanfeng is pretty shocked to run into her like this again. Let's give some background on their love life. Leona was his unrequited love for a full 3 years. He tried every trick in the book to make her love him. But deep down, she knew that what was ours was waiting on the sidelines. And after what happened, after the girl tricked him and left him to die in cold blood, he just snaps. His body is overflowing with rage. But considering he's been reborn, he's not the type to just dive headfirst into someone. Hanfeng composes himself, hoping to get his proper revenge another time. For now, there are some materials to collect. Iona's acting like she's worried about our boy. She keeps waving her hand to grab his attention, since he seems totally tuned out.
Sallayıp duruyor.
Our guy is struggling to stay polite to the girl. And he flatters Hyena, saying she's so beautiful that he's rendered speechless by her beauty. The girl tells him how sweet-talk he is in return, seeing it as a great opportunity to suggest going shopping. But despite all the flirting, as the boy walks right past Iona, our girl is just eating a piece of icy cold meat. It's like he treats the girl as if she's not even worth noticing. This hits Iona like a slap in the face, leaving the poor girl completely speechless. The truth is, Hanfeng knows exactly why she's being so kind to him, and the motive behind that fake invitation. The goal is to use the boy as a walking ATM to get the groceries for free. No more being someone's lapdog, those days are over, Valdemar's shopping. The plaza is famous for being the most crowded supermarket in the region. In your past life, as soon as that freezing apocalypse hit, this place was stripped bare overnight.
Soğana çevrilmişti.
It's still a mystery who looted the place like that. But for now, Hanfeng's only goal is to stockpile as much as possible, pushing the limits of human potential. Since he's sharp as a tack, he actually found a survival guide list. And he identified everything he needed from there. Food, winter clothes, medicine, essentials, fuel, and a ton of useful stuff. He has a huge shopping list, but then a second problem comes up. Our guy's broke, he can't do a thing. Just as I'm wallowing in dark thoughts, a message suddenly pops up on my phone. The message says he qualifies for a massive loan of 170,000 yuan this year. This is exactly the lottery ticket he needs. After all, who's sucker enough to pay off debts when the world is ending? So Hanfeng attacks every credit app he can find online and gets his fingers to work. He makes sure to grab credit from everywhere he can exploit. The scene turns back to Hyona.
Kız, oğlan.
The girl is absolutely furious about the way the boy treated her today. Since she's so stuck up, she just can't stomach the man she thought was her own personal slave rejecting her like this. This situation actually sums up his character perfectly. But after causing the man's death in a past life, there's not much left to say anyway. Hyona rants about Hanfeng being a broke loser who doesn't even have a car, swearing she'll never give him the time of day again. Just as he was finishing his preparations for the exam cudgel, a car pulled up beside him and honked. Seeing that the driver is the same man she was just bad-mouthing, Hyona is left in utter shock. The one who arrives is none other than Hanfeng, who stops to tease the girl and says he just bought the car, brand new. After all, his dad's raking it in back in America, so it's only natural he'd fire some cash over for his son to live it up. She also mentions she's busy dropping her father off at the airport. When she hears this, of course, she softens up, thinking he only rejected her because he was caught up with something very important at the time. He apologizes for inviting her at an inconvenient time. She's switching to the classic professional manipulator girl mode, crying while acting cute and telling me how cruel I am. Hanfeng's reaction to this is interesting, to say the least. First he calls her a total dummy, then he pulls her close and says he'd never abandon a babe like Hyona. Supposedly, the girl was very precious to him. Our stuck-up lady thinks she's hit the jackpot, of course. She immediately starts to play with the boy's feelings. He thinks he can wrap her around his finger by saying he has feelings for her too. He's suggesting we go to a movie together, followed by a nice dinner. But just as he's being so sweet, our boy says his goodbyes and is already busy with his bags in the trunk. At the same time, he complains about how busy he is with all the stuff he has to take home. Even Hyona is stunned, unable to figure out why the boy is suddenly stockpiling so many supplies. Hanfeng plays it cool, saying his goal is to raise the girl's expectations and standards. He also adds that he got a special gift for Hyona. Hearing this, the girl is over the moon and decides to head back home, hoping to see the gift later. As she leaves, a triumphant, sly smile spreads across Hyona's face. She thinks she's got the boy wrapped around her finger. But poor thing doesn't know our boy has the exact same expression on his face. Both of them are trying to manipulate each other. But the fact is, Hanfeng will never reveal the secret or location of his stash. This is your only ticket out of this damn apocalypse. When that moment arrives, as the world sinks into a mire of despair and ruin, Hanfeng is determined to exact sweet revenge on both his killer and Hyona. In fact, to be honest, he's looking forward to enjoying the upcoming apocalypse this time. Yeah, a voice inside me says Hyuna is gonna mess up big time and end up crawling on the floor. And when it happens, it'll be incredibly fun to watch. Doomsday is only 2 weeks away. When that day comes, a massive layer of thick, fluffy snow will cover the planet. And for the next month, temperatures will drop to around minus 20 degrees. Temperatures will drop gradually, reaching minus 70 degrees. And the world will be completely covered in snow, making it physically impossible to even step outside. And that's why food is so important. Our stacked all the supplies in his apartment and packed them up nicely to camouflage everything, so no one would suspect he was hoarding. He plans to move the most problematic materials at night when no one is around. Speaking of the apocalypse, a second problem will emerge in the form of power supply. He'll need fuel because of his
yakıt şart
instability.
olacak.
And as luck would have it, right at that moment, Hanfeng had already bought a year's worth of fuel to ensure no setbacks. To handle the next problem, knowing the heating wouldn't work anymore, he brought in a construction crew to properly renovate his house. And he had everything set to be durable and solid against the coming apocalypse. Finally, he prepared a private room for supplies and inventory so no one would suspect him. And get whatever she wants, whenever she wants. By the time he finished all his preparations, it was already July 14th. Now, only one day remained before temperatures would plummet uncontrollably. With preparations complete, the last item on his list is to master his superpower and survive this freezing winter. Even Hanfeng knows that relying on stocks alone won't be enough to survive. That's exactly where plant-based power steps in as a beacon of hope. Before him
Kendi
stand the
güçlerini
soybeans he managed to grow using his own powers. And now, it's time for the taste test. The main problem is he hasn't figured out the primary trigger for his talent yet. But anyway, Hanfeng takes a spoonful, hoping that despite his fears, this dish is at least edible. After polishing off half the plate, it's safe to reach this conclusion. These beans have no bad side effects. So, by using this power, they can safely produce and consume food. But the tricky part is figuring out what or how his hand glows like that. Based on his experiments, he only tested his ability on soybeans. So he's rummaging through the fridge, hoping to find other vegetables to try it on. Noon passed quickly and gave way to evening. Sleepy and drained of energy, Hanfeng opens his eyes and wonders if he just fainted. He's holding broccoli, and the kitchen's a battlefield, covered in vegetable scraps. He can't even think straight because of the exhaustion his own power creates. That's the only downside so far. He says while eating those soybeans just now, he managed to learn something new about his ability. Let's talk about what went down right before he fainted. To test its power, he brought down many materials and used them on different groups of plants. Now, here's the weird part. While some plants didn't react at all, others, like seeds, grew into full plants, just as he tried with soybeans. And there's a third category. Some of them just went bang right in their hands. Why this is happening remains a mystery. Hanfeng also discovered those charged substances with a post-explosion coal-like appearance. But this is a good thing because these materials can be stored and reused later on to provide heating. This way, he found a way to keep himself warm, even in the harsh apocalyptic conditions ahead. Excitedly, he focused on developing his powers and doing a few more trials. Even if he fumbles at first, when Hanfeng focuses on his strength, the magic kicks in and gives him what he wants. The man's energy was completely drained and he just collapsed on the spot. Back to the present, he seems quite confused about the logic of his own power. Some plants work, some don't. It's hard to find what works and what doesn't. Still, from this experience, he realized the key point of the trigger. Actually, this power is completely etched into your consciousness. So he sits down and starts meditating to have a spiritual experience, becoming one with nature and connecting his mind and body. And he reaps the fruits of his imagination immediately, of course, because as soon as he opens his eyes, Hanfeng is mesmerized, seeing his hand glowing green. This confirms my suspicion that your ability is linked to your consciousness. To be absolutely sure, he decides to test his ability on a pile of meat. Poor guy is totally disappointed when his ability doesn't work on the meat, because it means he'll have to live the rest of his life grazing. No matter how much I beg him to focus and practice his powers, there's nothing happens. This situation makes him question his thoughts again. Do you remember the meditation technique? He sees two different colors while doing that job. One is red, the other is green. And so far, she's only tried the green one. So this time, she shuts her eyes tight, hoping to connect her mind to her second talent. Shockingly, his hand begins to glow red, affecting the flesh and transforming it into a disgusting, spiky mass of slime that's no longer even recognizable. Nauseated by the result, the guy throws the meat to the ground and slowly approaches for another look. Hanfeng pinches the meat, then brings his hand back to see if it reacts to the red light it's emitting. The meat looks like it's well done now. This brings to mind whether that red light is only responsible for heating objects. As he examines her hand again, it starts to click. It's not about the meat cooking, no, quite the opposite. This thing is actually returning to a process of fragmentation and extinction. Thanks to this enlightenment, he makes a brilliant discovery. Green light speeds up the evolution process, while red light slows it down incredibly. So it drives them to decay and extinction. He clasps his hands over the meat in an effort to join them together. A burst of yellow light occurs, and the same piece of meat turns into a much larger mass than before. But this leaves a question mark in his mind. What happened to the soybeans in his other hand? They vanished. Which probably means they somehow merged with the meat. Hanfeng is truly amazed by his own power output. Because after examining it a bit more, he concludes that this is the freshest meat he's ever seen. He gets excited and wants to try again, but his luck doesn't quite hold up. Because our boy is messing up so badly, everything is turning pitch black. He slams his hands on the ground in anger, but finally decides to be patient. He has plenty of time to experiment with his powers. He's in a great mood after making so many discoveries in just one day. If he can master this ability, he thinks he'll become Superman and reach the top of the world. But then this fool realizes that the only thing he needs to save his life right now isn't food. He needs a weapon to protect himself from other people. Just as he's thinking of going out to get a gun, the harsh reality hits him. The apocalypse has already begun. Just like last time, the world is seeing an incredible amount of snowfall in July. It's still coming out. Before temperatures hit minus 45 degrees, he believes finding a weapon is essential. At the same time, because it's illegal in the country, she can't just go and buy a gun. Lost in thought, he spots that broccoli-headed punk bragging about being the brother of Lao Wang from the Sea Gang leadership. You know, that classic, "My brother's money can beat yours," tactic used to win petty arguments. Hanfeng actually remembers this clown from somewhere, thanks to that shitty fashion sense. And the funniest part is, people have given this guy a nickname. They call him Homeless Joe. Let's talk a bit about Li Si, aka Homeless Joe. He lives in the same neighborhood as us. The guy is known as a contractor who's connected with everyone around. People stop by to ask what's new and how things are going. And he keeps going on about how busy he is with his brother's projects, as if he's the most occupied guy in the neighborhood. The guy doesn't even have a job and is constantly seen on the phone, as if he's got millions to spend. Lyra acts like he's got a project going on. Looking at this guy, Hanfeng wonders if this idiot can even find the weapon he needs. He says hi to Homeless Joey and acts like they've been buddies for 40 years. But the truth is, this guy doesn't know our boy at all. Hanfeng is pretending to be Xiao Han. She strokes the man's ego and acts like they're old friends who should remember each other. The homeless idiot takes the bait and apologizes for not remembering, especially with so much work on his plate. Hanfeng looks around, gets close to the rascal, and explains the whole situation. When he finishes explaining, Homeless Joe is in shock, wondering what the hell this guy needs a gun for. At this point, Hanfeng is speechless. Before he can even make up a decent excuse, the blonde punk warns him. Since weapons are illegal, they're not to be taken lightly. Even if he has the connections to find a gun, it doesn't mean Homeless Joe intends to get involved in dangerous business. Hanfeng clarifies the situation, saying it's necessary for self-protection. Because he says some guys are obsessed with her. And that guy spat in her face, completely unbothered. Understandably, this drove our guy absolutely livid, so he went and confronted that clown. And he started beating him up right in front of everyone. He let her go after humiliating her. But the guy held a grudge and said he'd be back with his bros. And so, the very next day, our boy got thrashed by the whole gang. Hanfeng was openly mocked and beaten up. After that beating, he was determined to find a weapon to defend himself. Lucky for him, Homeless Joe took pity on his story. And he escalated it, saying that spitting in someone's face was definitely crossing the line. He thought these types of actions should be punished, but Hanfeng began to think this man had missed the main point of his complaint. Still, Homeless Joe put his arm around her like a guardian angel and promised to save the day.
söz verdi. Büyük
He'd give his big brother a call, and everything would be settled. Hanfeng was glad things were back on track. Homeless Joe suggested they take the bus because his luxury car is supposedly in the shop. Hanfeng didn't object and showed Homeless Joe a vehicle they could use. As they drove, Homeless Joe asked about the car's price in shock. Our boy said it cost him 700,000. And to him, it seemed like quite a bargain price. The guy was posing like some Instagram influencer, taking all kinds of photos. The funny part is, he wrote the description as if the SUV were his own. As for that big brother he mentioned, his punks were hanging out by the fire, complaining about the crappy weather. Hanfeng's car pulled up, and Homeless Joe jumped right out. The guy was acting so stuck up. The other kids couldn't believe that Homeless Joe now had his own SUV. And this guy is so shameless, he even told them he bought the car for 700,000 out of his own pocket. Hanfeng was stunned that Joe, a homeless man, had the nerve to blabber like that in front of the car's real owner. In the next scene, the thug took Hanfeng to his boss. As you'd expect from a gang leader, the guy is covered in tattoos. When he sees his brother here, his face drops, and he kicks the blonde viper out immediately. So Homeless Joe puts all the pressure on Hanfeng and says his friend here wants to buy a gun. The gang leader is surprised at first and gives our boy a nasty look. While Hanfeng is about to wet himself in fear, the boss is annoyed that they came all this way for one lousy pistol instead of something more exciting. The boss tells his apprentice to bring a gun, so he tosses the piece to Hanfeng for 6 grand. But our boy has no intention of playing with tiny guns like that. No way, he's here to go full John Wick mode. He wants something long range with a scope. The boss is shocked by Veritan's audacity and stands up to him for asking for a damn sniper. Hanfeng reminds her this isn't her father's farm, and she can't just bargain and wander around as she pleases. Yeah, boss, he's just a stuck-up jerk looking for trouble. That's exactly where Homeless Joe and his stories come in. Ours is cracking another one of their made-up stories again. This time it's about Hanfeng's wife, who cheated on him 3 times. At the end of the storytelling, the boss is absolutely fuming. He's going crazy over our boy's name. Honestly, you could make a movie script out of these ridiculous stories. The boss finally agrees to the sniper rifle, but says it'll still take a few days. Hanfeng is grateful that his request is being handled. Tell his sidekick Changzai to set up a semi-automatic one for him. The boss must have felt sorry for our guy because he's throwing in a free weapon as a gift. Hanfeng. He's literally speechless when he sees that the pistol was given to him for free. Wanting to show his gratitude, our boy decides to leak a very important piece of info to the gang. The government says they're buddies, and that the weather's going to get even worse. So, after this comes the flood. He says we should restock soon because supplies will run out shortly. This time, Hanfeng keeps a serious look, emphasizing the importance of his advice. They agree to follow the boss's advice, ending the meeting on a good note. On the way back, Homeless Joe keeps talking about how he handled that meeting like a professional mediator. Hanfeng also thinks it's good that his brother is in a great mood today. Truly grateful. He even offers to buy him a bunch of cigarettes. Homeless Joe plays hard to get at first, pretending to be a nice guy, but he eventually dives headfirst into the offer. The funniest part is he thought it was an easy request and asked for exactly 8 cartons of cigarettes in return. While she's rattling on, Hanfeng focuses on the checklist. He completed everything he needs for the apocalypse. He'll spend his remaining time practicing his skills. The only problem he needs to solve is the food shortage. After that, everything else will be smooth as silk. Just as he's walking all cool, confident in his plan, our guy slips and wipes out right in front of Homeless Joe. Hanfeng trembles in pain, his leg completely destroyed. Homeless Joe hasn't even figured out what the hell is going on. Our boy is as sure as his own name that he broke his leg. She hands the keys to Joey to take them to the hospital. Blondie looks at him silently and shamefully admits he doesn't even have a license. Well, they'll have to go old school. The punk's trying to help our boy lean on his shoulder. But the scene is so pathetic that Hanfeng calls a taxi to end this torture.
Bir sonraki sahnede
In the next scene, we are at the hospital's information desk. Head nurse Jin Yun is on the night shift, watching the snow pile up hour by hour. Suddenly, he gets an emergency call due to a staffing shortage and rushes to the hall. By the way, our boy really did break his damn leg. When he gets the report of the fracture at the hospital, his world falls apart. He needs to stay under observation for an hour before taking his meds and leaving. He had planned everything down to the last detail. But a ridiculous accident threw all the plans away. Brother Lee has things to handle because of the Super Yawn program. He says goodbye after mentioning there are plenty of deals. Well, this brings Hanfeng right back to where he started. He's all alone again, and this time he's got a bum leg to deal with. The hospital is packed with people. There's a sudden surge in patients due to the wild weather and freezing temperatures. And this proves how much things outside will go south in a few weeks. Hanfeng is waiting for his medicine, but the line is moving so slowly. In the distance, he spots the beautiful head nurse helping there while checking a patient's pulse. He's quite reliable at the hospital. That's why doctors and other nurses are eager to take advantage of it. The woman blows our boy's mind while doing her job. Hanfeng is swooning, unable to believe someone so young could be a head nurse. Plus, he's incredibly kind to every patient, not to mention his sweet demeanor from head to toe. Yeah, he's falling head over heels again, but for a different girl this time. While our guy is watching the woman, an old man calls for help, and she runs to him immediately. The man says his back suddenly hurts, but Jin Yun can't help reminding him that they're short-staffed. So, it'll take some time to look into your request. This clingy old man's real goal is to try and take advantage of the head nurse. While she had no idea, he sneakily put a camera under her legs and took a picture.
fotoğraf çekiyor.
The woman complies and promises to return with the x-ray results once things settle down. But the old geezer just won't stop. He goes into full creep mode and touches the woman's body. The naive head nurse still suspects nothing and assures her that a real doctor will soon arrive to properly examine the patient. But the real thing is, this old geezer doesn't hold back and grabs the hospital's most valuable assets before pulling any more stunts. Our boy throws that damn crutch of his into the man's face and knocks him down. The head nurse asks in a panic if the old man is okay, while Hanfeng apologizes for not knowing how to use the crutch. Right, because when you don't know how to use something, you throw it full speed at someone's head. While the old geezer shouts for him to stop, Hanfeng pretends to check the man's phone. Ours loses it when he sees the photo in the gallery. He can't believe this jerk not only took a photo of the nurse, but also had the nerve to touch her like that. He immediately confronts him and threatens to call security and have this old geezer thrown in a holding cell. After all, there are others in the hospital trying to take advantage, and Hanfeng has no intention of returning the phone. She swears that if she catches that creep pulling stunts like this again, she'll leak the report on social media. The old man stops in his tracks and storms off in a rage. Yeah, the guy who was barely holding on a second ago suddenly bolts out of the hospital at light speed. Even the head nurse stands frozen, unable to grasp how the man could run so fast. Meanwhile, Hanfeng gets the impression that some people in this world truly live at the peak of purity. He shows the girl the photo and tells her how the guy had bad intentions from the start. Hanfeng is willing to let the girl handle it, even giving her the phone to call the police. Jin Yin is over the moon as he takes the device back. But there's a troubling question on the girl's mind. Didn't Hanfeng have an ankle injury? And at that moment it clicks. His leg was actually broken, and he had been moving solely on adrenaline. With this awareness, the pain penetrates to his core, and he screams in agony. After a while, the girl wraps him up warmly. Fortunately, Hanfeng doesn't feel much pain anymore. The head nurse is truly grateful to him and makes a promise. He's blathering on about how he'd never let anyone use him. But while he's saying that, our boy's foot is already buried in the girl's chest. Hanfeng knows this girl won't wise up anytime soon. When Jin Yen is called back to duty, he clumsily runs off. And as he left, he told him to come back for a checkup in a week. Hanfeng, unfortunately, knows he will never see the girl again, because he knows the storm is coming in a week. With this gloomy thought, he leaves. The next day, the weather goes completely haywire.
diyor. Sıcaklık
Reports of sudden temperature drops are starting to come in from all over the world. It's even snowing in Dubai and Egypt. It's unheard of. Experts, coming from 46 different countries. He dropped in for an emergency meeting in Russia to discuss what's going on. According to these so-called experts, this extreme cold is temporary. It should break in a few days. Still, people are told to stay inside and follow instructions for their own comfort. Meanwhile, Hanfeng remains completely unfazed in the modification room. It has a heater that gives off endless warmth. He's got it made. To be honest, the news says the disaster will pass, but she knows it never will. It's a blatant lie made up to restrain the public. Total nonsense. She feels like a total fool for believing them the first time. But this time, things are different. Ready, more than ready. The stocks are filled to the brim, and the heating system works like a
bir
beast.
çalışıyor.
Nothing to spoil the fun for now. The building group is literally losing it, constantly complaining about how insane the cold is, and how they just can't get warm. The most interesting thing about this group is that someone's staying anonymous. It basically slaps us in the face that an ice age apocalypse is starting, and this blizzard is coming from within the earth itself. The message is shock Hanfeng because no one was supposed to know this yet. Hanfeng's brain instantly marks this random mysterious guy as someone he definitely needs to watch out for. After all, he's the story's protagonist. Hanfeng was supposed to be the only one who knew about the coming apocalypse. The once happy residents have now turned into an unleashed mob. Lately, they've been tagging the site management to clean up the mess left by this blizzard. Reading endless boring messages is like death, so the group chat turns into a metaphorical amusement park. All site residents are showing off with their chi-bike avatars. Angry residents are not at all happy with this situation. If snow keeps piling up in front of the exit, they won't even be able to go grocery shopping. They paid a fortune just to get this crappy service. They even want to have a word with the realtor. If management can't justify the money they're given. On the other side, the site management team is panicking, constantly apologizing for the inconvenience. But a few half-hearted apologies aren't enough to calm the anger hanging over the residents due to poor management. To be honest, they want their money back. This disgrace is unbearable. In the middle of all this chaos, there's our boy Hanfeng, and he's clearly annoyed watching the residents waste their energy arguing over nonsense. After all, the site owner doesn't have magic powers to stop a snowstorm. But not everyone on the site has lost hope. One of the residents, Shinshuayu, mature enough to admit they can't fight a blizzard. His better idea is that they should help each other instead of making things harder. Natural disasters are completely out of site management's control, so taking your frustration out on them is pointless. Well, not everyone in the lobby agrees with Chin's calm attitude. These people are so wild and narrow-minded that instead of cooperating, they start burying Chin just for sucking up to the management. Chin is trying to explain that he's not taking sides. He's just being realistic and objective. Arguing won't get them anywhere, and cornering the site management is completely pointless. But once again, the crowds and the snow outside refuse to calm down until everything's cleared and the groceries are done. Starving to death isn't really their style. Chin is doing his best to explain things to this brainless idiot. He says bridge clearing the snow outside doesn't guarantee the roads will be open. He suggests walking to the store just to be safe, especially since clearing the sidewalks is much easier than opening the roads. By the way, Hanfeng scowls when he recognizes this guy preaching like some fake guru. Judging by the way our boy looks at her, it's clear their past wasn't exactly pleasant. Suddenly, a weary-faced man with zero tolerance for nonsense joins the conversation. No formalities, he just snaps right back. If anyone wants to eat, go outside and start clearing the roads. Otherwise, all this gossip won't melt the snow. Then it goes offline. Another man steps forward, ready to go down and help clean up the mess outside. This sharp-tongued brawler seems to be another face familiar to Hanfeng. Slowly but surely, residents are starting to join the crew to clear the roads. Even those delicate little ones are willing to get their hands dirty for this holy cause. And then there's the unforgettable Siona, who volunteered to help. Hanfeng can't understand how a coward like him agreed to join. Turns out her volunteering was just a ruse to attract all those suckers who wouldn't let a beauty like her work while men were around. As expected, he exploited the opportunity to the fullest and dumped the work on others. What else would you expect from an opportunistic snake like him? Hanfeng is leaving the chat. The frustration on your face is obvious. This woman never fails when it comes to killing the mood. Right now, she's actually texting him. Because she knows this desperate loser will do whatever she wants. Why is that? So he's asking him to bring him supplies. As a bonus, he even adds a photo of her bare legs and those shapely calves. She's trying to seduce you with those tiny clothes, despite the cold. But ours has a broken leg. No horse could ever catch up to this beauty, even if it tried. So he decides to snap back with a mocking response. It was bound to give the girl goosebumps. And as it turns out, the guy hit the bullseye with his words. The girl was so annoyed that she wanted to kick the guy and crush him. Anyway, let's rewind a bit and see what's going on. It's been exactly 3 days since the blizzard started, and the temperature has already dropped below -20 degrees. Since we were only at the beginning of the coming apocalypse, the central heating was still working perfectly. It was still working like a beast online for people to get their daily dose of distraction. So naturally, like any bored teenager, Hanfeng spent all day scrolling through TikTok. He was watching those hot girls filming videos. But to be honest, I wasn't really into it. He was already feeling sick of it. And it was supposedly only the second day of the apocalypse. This situation made him think about what loneliness can do to a man. And that broken leg wasn't helping at all, you know? It basically took the wind out of his sails and trapped him right where he was. And a full recovery would take at least a few months. With no other choice left, he went back to watching video after video. Right then, he saw something on the news that left him speechless. Turns out there's this guy with some crazy self-healing ability. The doctors say this guy fell from the 15th floor. His organs failed and his bones were shattered. But before long, the man started to regenerate, actually healing himself. Thinking of supernatural powers reminded Hanfeng that he had a few tricks up his own sleeve. So he lit up that familiar green light on his hand and tried to heal her broken bone. But that green energy fizzled out without doing a thing. He tried again, but no, it was useless. The only thing waiting for him was frustration. After accepting defeat, he slumped into the chair. He was disappointed because his hopes had briefly soared. After hours of endless scrolling, he finally started drifting off to dreamland. In his dream, he was riding a giant goat dressed in primitive clothes. Not just one goat, but a whole herd of goats following behind him. Their heads kept bobbing while they were flying. In this wide shot, you can see that massive crowd following right behind him. But suddenly, the fun ride came to a noisy end when the goat slammed on the brakes and threw him off its back. He hurt his leg when he fell, and one of the goats started licking it. Our guy found this weird goat affection quite disgusting, of course. And he pushed the animal, which made the goat angry. Then the goat stuck out its ridiculously long tongue. Hanfeng wrapped it around his leg and threw him toward the sky. The part of the leg where the tongue was wrapped has started to heal. And instantly, right in that moment, Hanfeng woke up in a cold sweat, completely shocked. I'm dead serious. That weird dream messed him up so bad, the guy was literally sweating bullets. Suddenly, he noticed his leg glowing with green energy and repairing itself. Before long, he carefully unwrapped his bandages and timidly set his foot on the ground. Amazingly, it didn't hurt at all. It looks like that green light helped it heal. But only after sleeping, to test this crazy theory, he grabbed a sharp knife in a manic attempt to injure himself, aiming to trigger the healing again. Her hand trembled as she reluctantly made a small cut on her index finger. While he tests his new ability, let's head outside. There, angry residents are finally putting their energy towards something useful. through their joint efforts, they cleared the path in front of the main gate. Of course, John deserves all the credit. With that rallying speech on unity, John then gives credit to a hard-working old man. The old man turns and praises the twins, who work just as hard as he does. And everyone's favorite, with those big breasts, Nurse Jean Jihan. Poor thing is struggling to walk on the slippery snow. The twins notice the princess in trouble and reach out to help her up. Afterward, the twins decide to head back to clear the path more and tell her to call out if she needs any help. John notices the snowfall is getting heavier, so he's warning everyone to finish the supplies quickly so they can return as soon as possible. Speaking of supplies, something suddenly occurs to the old man, but he thought it wasn't worth bringing up until John insisted. The old man is spilling a rumor from a few days ago. Apparently, one of the residents was seen bringing supplies in a small truck, acting as if they were moving in. John doesn't really care about this. It's perfectly normal for someone to move their belongings in when moving into an apartment after all. But then, the old man adds one more interesting detail. She noticed there were gas tanks and a fireplace near the guy. This definitely doesn't look like normal moving stuff. It felt like this guy was prepping really hard to survive the winter. Before they can dig deeper, the twins return with a status report. Suddenly, a guy appears out of nowhere. Clearly, he overheard the old man's story and is dying to learn more about this mysterious person preparing for winter. But this curious guy Lu Yin then takes a snowball right to the face, because Lu Yin wants him to stop slacking off and get back to work. Zhang steps in to end the argument and tells everyone to move out since the main road is clear. Nurse Jean is also quite excited to go shopping. Meanwhile, the old man asks Zhang for his opinion. He wonders if this new resident knew in advance that the snowstorm was coming. Zhang thinks for a second, then skillfully dodges the question. He claims the storm will die down soon, so there's no need to worry. Worst case, if the storm doesn't stop, they're lucky to have a neighbor with a well-stocked pantry. That way, he can help everyone survive. So this is actually a good thing. As they head to the market, the blizzard intensifies, forcing everyone to move faster. Meanwhile, our lazy boy Hanfeng is still passed out in his warm apartment. But his nap is interrupted by a knock at the door. There's a familiar voice calling him from outside. When he opens the door, it turns out to be homeless Joe holding those high-end goods our guy wanted. This was the gift boss who promised. Brotherly agreed to bring this, because he had stocked up on supplies beforehand. And he no longer had to scavenge the city for supplies like a madman, as most other citizens did. Still, he was grateful to Hanfeng for coming in this weather. Brotherly also had a very interesting piece of information. Various rumors had already started spreading. Last night, an unknown person completely cleared out the shelves of a supermarket in the Eastern District. And when Boss One's gang cleared the rivals and opened the way, they found a massive workshop in the supermarket. To Hanfeng, something like this seemed incredible. To empty a whole supermarket in a single night, who could have done such a thing? But there was no room for doubt in Brotherly's words, and this had definitely happened. Hanfeng was starting to realize that things around him were getting even weirder than in his previous life. Looks like he wasn't the only one who got superpowers. For a moment, his thoughts were interrupted by Brotherly. Han warned Finch to dress more warmly and to be careful. Then he said goodbye and left. Finally, our hero could be alone and weigh the events. He kept trying to find a logical explanation for what happened last night. How could someone empty out a supermarket in a single night? The only explanation he could think of was that it was done by someone like in novels and comics, a superpowered person who could store unlimited supplies in a personal dimension. The only question was, could people with such talents exist in this world? And the answer to this question was quite simple. Since he had superpowers, someone else could too. It was a disturbing discovery. Now, Hanfeng didn't have a single second to waste. He needed to examine his superpowers in more detail. That way, he could have a strategy to counter other superpowered individuals when he faced them. He had to know his strengths, weaknesses, and the limits of his superpowers. To do this, He opened his journal and began reviewing the facts he already knew about his powers. At this point, he already knew his power could react with different foods, both plant and animal-based. With her power, she could grow them quickly, increase their volume, and also toast them. But it would taste terrible. But unfortunately, there were later restrictions he found out about. The success rate of applying power wasn't that high and varied depending on the product. For example, the chance to grow plants for soybeans was 10%. And for meat, this rate was even lower. Hanfeng just couldn't understand why things were working this way. Suddenly, the enchanted soybean exploded in his hand with a foul green smoke. And instead of a normal plant, our hero was left with a piece of stone. It's just a stone that reeks. This situation was starting to get on his nerves. The failure rate was very high. Hanfeng had to learn how to use his power more effectively. That's why he was determined to start a rigorous workout. After all, nothing helps you learn a skill faster than practicing it. With this in mind, he wasted no time and worked until late in the evening. He finally made it. Hanfeng was now holding a fresh, vibrant, and unshelled soybean plant in his hand. Such success did not come easily to him. He was sweating buckets and had already turned into a pretty good heater for his apartment. But that was the price to pay to crack the rules of increasing the success rate. He discovered that the green light energy is not stable, and for different products, depending on their nutritional value, that green light had to be applied for different periods of time. If you don't get the timing right, you'll mess up and end up with a burnt, stinking stone. So you need to know the exact ideal cooking range for every product. This situation reminded Hanfeng of something familiar. A popular online music and dance game released 10 years ago. You know, that game where you have to press the right keys in rhythm at the right intervals. The energy values could also be compared using the arrow keys. Up, down, right, and left. And the energy value given to the object had to be correct every second. And finally, that critical point had to be captured. And the process should have been stopped right then. If you do it right, you'll succeed and every soybean will turn into a plant. After success with plants, Hanfeng began experimenting with meat. Of course, meat was different from vegetables. If you did something wrong during the process, the meat would turn into a disgusting, black sludge. Still, the principles of converting the meat should have remained similar. The first place to start was determining how much energy the meat needed. Everything seemed to be running smoothly and going according to plan. But that was the problem. The chicken thigh exploded into a pile of disgusting black slime, just like the others. It seemed that learning to work with meat would take even longer than plant-based foods. Hanfeng tried many times and failed. The chicken thighs were popping one after another. It felt like this losing streak would never end. Finally, our hero's patience snapped. He even screamed in despair, cursing this damn ability with its increased difficulty. But our hero wasn't one to give up. As the snow intensified outside and the temperature dropped further, Hanfeng didn't give up trying. The traces of this were all over the kitchen. And then came that moment of truth. The last chicken drumstick. Our hero was now doing everything on autopilot with a blank expression on his face. And he had even given up hope of success. Up and down, left and right, red and green energy. To him, it felt like an overly complex minigame. It kept repeating. And as soon as he made a mistake, he had to start all over again. The tension was peaking, and this time, Hanfeng succeeded. He managed to make the chicken drumstick massive. Our hero huffed disdainfully, said it was worth it, then collapsed on the ground, tired but happy. He finally found a way to synthesize meat. The weather outside was getting worse by the day. Today's news announced that July 17th is the third day of the snow disaster. The same things were happening in every corner of the country. And it seemed humanity was facing a disaster that only happens once every few thousand years. To ensure people's basic livelihood, authorities were actively fighting the consequences and taking measures to help citizens. The next day, Hanfeng woke up to news like this. How many times had he heard this before? Empty warnings and promises. About how the heavy snowfall paralyzed transportation, electricity, and the internet. But everything was going to be fixed. It was close, and all they had to do was wait a bit longer. Humanitarian aid should have reached the disaster areas soon. Finally, the news anchor advised everyone to stay home and avoid going out unnecessarily. None of this was surprising to Hanfeng. He had heard all of this in his past life. Suddenly, a notification popped up on his phone. Right after, several more in a row. Hanfeng immediately realized those noisy neighbors were making a scene in the group chat again. And unable to resist, he couldn't help but join the argument. The buzz around there was incredible. Everyone was discussing the morning news. Some fools believe rescue teams would actually come and help them. Others think these are just empty promises. They were planning on fending for themselves. Only one profile picture stood out from the crowd. And he asked these naive types if they really believed what they were told on the news. That was old Uncle Leo, and he didn't believe a word they said on TV. If everything were under government control, rescue teams would have arrived by now. On the contrary, he'd heard rumors from old friends that the government was gathering armored vehicles in City A, the capital. They're reportedly deploying tanks and other heavy weapons. They're probably preparing for that war that's about to break out. A chilling silence filled the group chat of paranoid survivors upon hearing the possibility of all-out war against an unknown enemy. Then, the worried messages started pouring in. They asked brand name if what he told Uncle Lou was true. If it's true, they're officially done, right? Meanwhile, Hanfeng was really enjoying himself as the topic of war came up. He had heard something about this situation in his past life. Mr. John stepped in and silenced all this noise. If what Uncle Lou said is true, then he argued they must start taking survival measures to save everyone. Some homeowners in the neighborhood had already run out of supplies. With government support uncertain, he proposed setting up an organization for those in need. He strongly advised those with plenty of supplies to lead by example by donating part of their stock. Mr. John promised to donate half of his stocks to anyone in need. The other hosts immediately began whispering amongst themselves about this suggestion. One man heartily agreed with Mr. John's proposal. After all, everyone was trying to get through this crisis. He promised to donate whatever he could, and even tried to get Lee Hyona involved. This woman knew that crazy guy Wu Quan. The guy was trying to humiliate the woman in public just because she rejected him before. That's why Lee Hyona had to get defensive and play the innocent girl act. He apologized, saying there was no extra food left. His sycophants immediately jumped in to defend the witch. This little skirmish almost made the organization plan impossible, because they couldn't even agree on making sacrifices. But finally, donations started pouring in. Many people must have been impressed by Mr. John's fiery speech. Food, clothing, medicine, all basic needs have been presented. Mr. John expressed his gratitude to those willing to help. With so many people to manage, he thought it'd be wise to appoint some hosts to lead the operation. Of course, he would lead the team himself. This would be a temporary emergency committee responsible for planning and distributing donated supplies. Hanfeng smirked as soon as he read the announcement. This temporary committee thing also happened in your previous life. Later, it would turn out to be a setup to seize other people's resources. Today was July 19th, the 5th day of the apocalypse. The temperature outside had already dropped to minus 40 degrees. The day had come when the building's central heating system failed due to extreme frost. Everyone thought desperately, looking for ways to keep their bodies warm without the comfort of a heater. Some had managed to light a tiny fire in their homes. It was the same as the previous timeline. The situation was terrible now, but it was about to get even worse. The exception to this, of course, was our main character. Hanfeng was enjoying himself with those failed experiment coals, perfect for lighting his fireplace. On the table sat an icy, fizzy cola and a delicious slice of strawberry cake. As for Hanfeng, he was doing what most of us would do in his place. He was playing single-player video games without caring a bit about the outside world. But his peace would be shattered by a sudden phone call. He took a break from the game and checked his phone while sipping his cola. The person on the line was the head of Block 8. They planned to clear the roads in 20 minutes and needed manpower in the basement parking lot. Hanfeng held back the urge to curse at this guy who had just crossed his path. These idiots still hadn't caught on. The snow wouldn't stop, piling up and up. Reluctantly, Hanfeng decided to leave the comfort of his home and head down to the main lobby. He thought getting into it with the neighbors would be a headache. For now, he had to minimize the chance of his secret getting out. Just by looking at the door, everyone could see the snow had already trapped them inside the building. The other volunteers were deeply frustrated to see the paths they cleared wiped away by the highest snowdrifts they had ever seen. The volunteers who wanted to open the door saw Hanfeng and called him over to help. They put all their weight against the door and pushed together on the count of 3. To everyone's shock, the entrance opened and a ton of snow rushed in. And the lobby succumbed to the freezing cold of a raging blizzard. The storm was so fierce that none of them could survive this cold. When you got that close to the storm, even opening your eyes could have left you injured. Hanfeng deeply regretted leaving his comfy seat to brave this grunt work and the risk of freezing. Anyone going out in this weather would have been a goner in no time. Fortunately, the other volunteers had the same epiphany. Only a complete idiot would try to go out in this heat. Speaking of idiots, he finally decided to show up. A voice that sounds all too familiar to Hanfeng. It was none other than Homeless Joe, aka Brother Lee. He was scolding people for acting like cowards, when they should have stood firm during such tough times. Hearts trembled with fear while they tried to talk Lee out of this stupidity. No one should have gone out against the wrath of that blizzard. But Lee was cut from a different cloth, of course. First, he finished his cigarette in one breath. Like a complete maniac, he dove into the snow, into that pile trapping everyone inside. This idiot's literally shouting and gesturing like an anime character. Kara was punching, scattering the pile here and there. This continued for a while. He even managed to carve a hole the size of Homeless Joe right in the middle of a man-sized snowbank. Then silence fell. A few minutes later, the only thing the volunteers could hear were muffled pleas for help coming from beneath the snowdrifts. The others had to drag Homeless Joey out through the snow.
Çıkarmak zorunda kaldı.
His face had turned purple from the cold and being buried under heavy snow. The volunteers finally decided it was impossible to go out and closed the door. Hanfeng ran to Brother Lee. She was trying to check if this stupid gangster was okay. He asked everyone to go to the parking lot, so they can find a roll call supervisor first. They could always decide what to do when the snow stopped. With such a violent blizzard sweeping across the world, it was no longer a situation that people could solve with human strength alone. It felt a bit more relaxed in the building's underground parking lot. The de facto leader, Mr. Jiang, was surrounded by hosts as usual. Once he got the reports from the lobby, he confirmed the cleanup operation had to be paused. Also, from now on, the underground parking lot would be the designated donation and collection point. Hanfeng hung out quietly in the background. It was his first time meeting the man named Jiang from the group chat. So this was the guy who spearheaded the formation of that fraud committee. With his polite and silver-tongued manner, Mr. Jiang would manipulate everyone with courtesy and that false illusion of support and unity. Bei Jiang spoke about the incredible outpouring of donations from many homeowners. These generous donations are supposed to help those in need. He's grateful for it, and the mood in the parking lot was quite positive. People felt good about the sacrifices they made. It gave them a false sense of unity, as they all worked toward the same goal of survival. But Hanfeng knew something they didn't. They just had to wait and see. As the disaster dragged on as if it would last forever, they would soon regret wasting their resources like this. Liabi was still shaking from that ridiculous show he just tried to put on. They decided to go upstairs first to say goodbye to Hanfeng. Glancing over the parking lot, Hanfeng noticed someone eye-catching. This was that goofy nurse he met in the hospital when he broke his leg. She was wearing a cute winter jumpsuit and clumsily carrying an armful of boxes. Clearly struggling to find her way through the crowd gathered around the committee, she eventually bumped into some of the men standing there due to her clumsiness. If Hanfeng hadn't rushed in to save the day once again, he would have fallen flat on his face. He asked the blushing nurse if she was okay as she held his daughter and the box. When the girl finally opened her eyes, she thanked him and finally remembered Hanfeng from the hospital. Then he remembered her leg must be seriously injured. He shouldn't have been in any condition to catch falling beauties. Realizing he acted without considering the current situation, Hanfeng didn't know how to handle it. He stumbled over his words and finally blurted out that his healing speed had always been great since he was little. With such nervous movements, it wasn't convincing at all. Luckily, the nurse was so naive that she couldn't tell he was lying from his words and actions. He just thought your healing rate was amazing. Hanfeng offered to help carry the boxes. The girl refused at first, saying they were heavy, but our boy insisted. It took some smooth talking, but she finally let him handle the boxes. The moment she grabbed the materials with both hands, she was shocked to see how heavy they actually were. They had an unnatural weight to them. Curious, he asked what was inside. He explained that these were mostly medical supplies they donated to those in need. He also added that they might be a bit too heavy, and that he could carry them to the donation point himself. Mesmerized by her beauty and kindness, Hanfeng wouldn't have uttered a word of complaint even if you'd added several more kilos to his load. The nurse kept reminding the girl not to overexert herself, as she claimed to be stronger than most men. When asked if he had always been this strong since childhood, he was a bit cautious about saying there was a reason behind it. Hearing these mysterious words naturally made Hanfeng curious, but the girl looked uncomfortable telling the story, and he apologized for bringing it up. It's just that something happened recently that he couldn't quite explain. Plus, they had been talking and walking for a while, and the girl still didn't know his name. Hanfeng politely introduced himself. In return, the angelic nurse also graced us with her name, Jean Shui. Judging by that huge smile, he seemed truly pleased with this unexpected encounter. Every time he saw that smile, he was left speechless. He was just about to close the deal when Nurse Jean asked what he did for a living. And he honestly said that he was unemployed. That's what you call messing up when you're this close to the finish line, champ. But thanks to Manhwa logic, an impatient man happened to pass by and bumped into Nurse Jean, making her lose her balance. The girl struggling to stay up finally fell onto Hanfeng. He was the only person she could hold on to for balance. This caused her soft breasts to press against Hanfeng's arm. Hanfeng, who didn't have a flirtatious bone in his body, just stood there and enjoyed the moment. Nurse Jean stepped back right away and apologized. Hanfeng was trying to say it was fine. It would have been a perfect first encounter if not for Li Yan, who approached Hanfeng like a sleep-deprived zombie with a miserable face. You could see what hunger and cold had done to him. Like a total parasite, the witch jumped right onto Hanfeng. She asked who the pink-haired woman was, and if she was a friend, intentionally rubbing her chest against his arm and slowly clinging to him. Nurse Jean felt uncomfortable immediately and grabbed the box supplies from Hanfeng's hand. He just wanted to record his donations and didn't mean to interrupt the two friends' conversation. As Hanfeng sadly watched Nurse Jean flee toward the donation point, he asked Hina why she came down. The witch explained she came for supplies and was worried about Hanfeng because of his lack of movement. Our guy scratched his head and said he was just about to message her. She called him a liar because she just saw him chatting happily with another lady. Then the question started coming about whether there was extra food at home. The woman said she was running out of food and asked if she could scrounge some from Hanfeng. Ours didn't get mad at this, of course. Instead, he kept playing the love-struck fool with a dirty smirk. Hanfeng claimed to have almost no food left, but still said he could share. But he had one condition. He'd only share his meal with those who replied to his messages. He acted boldly, grabbed the witch by the waist, and asked if she wanted to come to his home and stay with him for a few days. And used to the newfound confidence of this man, who was supposedly a dog, the witch was stunned for a second. She pushed him and smiled. Li Hyona said if Hanfeng wants to chat, they can do it online. Faced with this flat rejection, Hanfeng turned around and headed home. Desperate, the witch grabbed his arm before he could get away and told him to wait. He claimed he's
Zamanlarda epey
changed quite a
değiştiğini
bit lately. Han also claimed that he was always very serious about his feelings. Giving the most convincing puppy eyes imaginable, Hyona said she didn't want people thinking she was only with Hanfeng for his money, so she needed a bit more time before taking a more serious step. Hanfeng watched this theater play with a blushing face. Luckily, he came to his senses right away. If he hadn't already died at this woman's hands once before, he would have fallen for those words. But right now, all she wanted was to rip off that ugly mask. The problem was he still hadn't found out who the man behind the witch was. Now that I think about it, why would she even bother calling him? She could have acted like in her past life, waiting for Hyona to bring the man right to her. This time he would be prepared. If they had steel clubs, Hanfeng had a sniper rifle. When he noticed this, he decided not to stir the pot and just said he was hanging out, playing it off as a joke. Now, the witch felt a
Şaka
bit
için
ashamed for
Oscar
putting on an Oscar-worthy performance for a simple prank. Still, Hanfeng said he'd wait for her message to bring supplies the next day. So they finally said their goodbyes. The woman even told him to call her if there was anything he wanted to talk about. An evil smile spread across the corners of that witch's hideous mouth as she left the parking lot. But he had no idea that this time, the one being played wasn't Hanfeng. The man took great pleasure in making him suffer slowly. Hanfeng spent 2 days without looking for the witch. This resulted in Li Hyane blowing up his phone with angry messages about the delivery of the promised supplies. Hanfeng let those stinging messages pile up while sipping his soda and devouring his steaming steak. Feasting like a king while tormenting the witch who killed you in our past life was truly delightful. Finally finding a way to produce those flavors was a total game changer. The
Daki
freezing cold
dondurucusu
outside made for the perfect atmosphere to enjoy a hot meal inside. While everyone was freezing their heads off, our guy was sweating in his bathrobe. A total alpha move. And besides, he hadn't just been lying around for the past few days. After countless experiments, he confirmed 2 important things. First, he couldn't grow the meat forever. Second, just like soybeans, meat could be replicated indefinitely. They've already sacrificed pounds of meat for every beanstalk sprouted in the experiments. He used half to grow more beans and ate the other half. He could easily apply the same principle to meat. Under red and green light, half a steak and a handful of soybeans could produce a whole slab of steak. Repeating the same process would provide an unlimited amount of steak. After countless tests to verify this hypothesis, he concluded that he wouldn't have to worry about enjoying his meals in the future. Some TV channels were still sending reporters to
Giren bu
cover this
benzeri görünüm
unprecedented snowstorm, now entering its 19th day. It was August 2nd, and even in those postcard-perfect Maldive Islands near the equator, the average temperature had reached minus 42 degrees.